your shoulder out. He wiggle it up, he wiggle it down. Got speed to move.
The Rubber Band Man song seems appropriate if we were going to start off with politics, which we aren't. But with El Presidente's ability to twist himself into whatever position is appropriate for whatever microphone happens to be in front of his face. Welcome back to Off Day. It's been a week. Andy, welcome back.
Hey, dude, I blame the Astros for this show turning into a political commentary show because they've been so stick pointing at the rock beam all spring that there's been nothing to talk about. So we've had to steer into the things that actually, kind of technically matter in this world.
Yeah, right.
Which I guess include gas prices.
Yeah, well, I do want to get. I have some thoughts.
You're supposed to be a distraction.
Well, that's the thing.
The Astros are supposed to be sports are supposed to be a distraction from the bad shit going on in the world. And guess what? You haven't been doing your job, Houston Astros. I don't feel distracted.
I mean, I'm I guess distracted by the fact that apparently now Bryce Matthews might be the opening day everyday left fielder. Like,
you know what? Good for the kid.
Dana Brown, what are you doing?
Not acquiring an actual established major league outfielder is what the left-handed bat that he's been promising us. When did he get this job?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. 3 years ago in the opening press conference, he wanted to beef up the left-handed hitting talent on this team. Every press conference since then, he's on the market for a left-handed hitting outfielder. Do we have one yet that we've acquired? Hell no. I guess Joey Loperfido counts, and he would have counted more if we hadn't gotten rid of him in the first place. But no, good for Bryce Matthews. I think he has proved everything you can prove in the minor leagues at this point. But I think he's more endemic of the fact that the Astros have no real answers in the outfield, and so they
wasn't he drafted as a second baseman?
Second baseman / shortstop. He played shortstop in college. Nobody thought he was going to be a major league shortstop, so they tried. They did stick him in center. Yeah, they did stick him in center a little bit in Round Rock and in the minors, and then he's been primarily an infielder since then. But evidently, over the winter, he played 4 games or 6 games in the outfield, and that's enough for them to go, this is an option.
Yeah, I don't know.
Back to Zach Cole didn't hit during the spring. Joey Loperfido had a good week and then 3 bad weeks, which in the spring can make your numbers look really good because small sample sizes being what they are. Jake Myers is still – did he have a career year last year? We're not sure. So they are reaching. I think the only one that I feel comfortable about who's returning and evidently won his outfield job is Cam Smith. And good for him, but I think he also won it by default.
Just for an outline for those watching the show. So we're going to start with the Astros, then we're talking some college baseball.
Rambling.
Then we're going to finish with some pop culture and some politics stuff. Real quick, though, I wanted to show you the sweet jersey, Andy. This is the Aggies, which is one of the DR teams. And then the airport in the DR, they have an entire store just for their baseball league. So you can get lost in there. There you go.
I want to tell you my experience in New York, and I know it's New York, big international thing. I was there during the WBC. New York as a city is all in on the WBC. You can go into a number of the the Times Square gift shops and buy a Dominican Republic jersey or a Japan jersey, U.S. jerseys as well. There were individual sports shops. There's Paragon Sports in close to Greenwich Village, if I have my directions right, had every jersey, every hat, the Dominican Republic hat that you were waiting on for, 6 weeks?
Yeah.
That thankfully showed up before your trip.
Thankfully, day of the trip.
You sent me that text, and I walked into that store that same day, and there's 68 of them. So I could have gotten one and overnighted it to you if I really wanted to. But they're all in. And then I come back to Houston, where they hosted several rounds of the WBC, and it's just crickets. So it's really interesting to me where you have pockets that really embrace the WBC, especially for the Latin American teams. And then you have the U.S. who, by and large, outside of our circle, who are baseball fans, ignored that it was happening and then got all indignant that their team didn't win.
There's definitely an excitement gap, and there's definitely I mean, I was texting you throughout this process, but it was surreal wearing that hat in the Dominican Republic. I mean, to the point that when I landed, I got to skip customs because I had the hat on. Like, Jess and I got free upgrades at places for having the hat on. It was because there was a palpable excitement level. Even after they lost, the excitement level was still there. Versus, like you said, a sense of entitlement when it came to people that were watching and rooting for the American team. And what's funny is, for as much as you could not touch really the American lineup, none of our arms showed up. And that's why you lose when you don't pitch.
Well, I saw somebody also comment that the lineup seemed to be peppered with Philadelphia Phillies, and it was just shocking that they didn't show up at a big moment.
Well, I mean, how many didn't Aaron Judge strike out in that one game looking or something? I mean, to end the game. I mean, that's on brand.
Let me tell you this about Aaron Judge. I'm almost tired of beating that horse.
Yeah,
he's never going to hit in the playoffs. I don't know why anybody is surprised by this at this point. He's a great regular season player, and lots of players are Hall of Fame players for being great regular season players. Good for Aaron Judge. I don't think he's ever going to be more than he is, which is great. He's an MVP caliber player. He's just not somebody you can count on in the playoffs, and the Yankees seem to not want to learn that lesson.
Yeah. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, Aaron Judge.
Oh, the pajamas he wears alone make him a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to go back and think. I mean, he's won what?
But if you're trying to drum up audience by throwing controversial takes out there, though, good job.
No, I mean, I actually like Aaron Judge. I mean, I'm pretty on record saying, I know I'm supposed to hate him because he got mad at Altuve for the whole MVP thing, but of all the non-Astros, I actually like watching him play.
Well, to put it in Astros parlance, for fans who aren't familiar or don't know that far back, to me, it's the Jeff Bagwell argument. You don't keep a guy away from the Hall of Fame for everything they did in the regular season because of a really poor sample size in the playoffs. Because the Hall of Fame is not about playoff performance, no matter how much fans want it to be when it works out to their favor. It's about the career.
Sure.
Eric Judge is a perfectly good player, an exceptional player in the regular season. Jeff Bagwell was an incredible player in the regular season.
That's a good comparison. And
I wouldn't keep either of them out of the Hall of Fame, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good comparison. But yeah, so for those really wanting to talk the Astros, I don't know what the hell we're going to get when this team rolls out. It's going to feel very much like 1998, I bet. A really good team with a lot of good arms that just are not going to hit very much. So I think get used to losing games 3-2.
Yeah, that seems to be the general gist, and all of the positive prognostications, and there have been several amongst our fan base at least, seem to be based on this idea that Alvarez is going to be an MVP candidate, and Altuve is not aging, and Correa is not aging, and Paredes is going to get 600 at-bats somehow, and Walker is going to die because our fan base hates him. I don't know what that's about. I guess it's Jose Abreu's spillover still. But what I see is an aging lineup with a couple of young guys who need to repeat career years. Main one being Jeremy Pena. We were all talking about whether or not Jeremy Pena is worth extending this time last year.
Yeah.
And he went off during the regular season, had a great regular season. Jake Myers similarly had a great regular season for him. Those two guys have to repeat and improve on career years. And then everything else has to fall in place. And this, when you are sitting here in March thinking, well, if all the tumblers fall in place, we'll make the playoffs. That's not a good team. That is a recipe for being mediocre. And that's, at least in this corner of this show, that's what I'm expecting this year. A team that is going to hover around 500 and might not make it by the time all is said and done.
What I find interesting before I get into a little bit of that is, we kind of had the reputation as a show as being sunshine pumpers. And I would just like to point out that, no, I think we just calls them as we sees them, because now we have kind of we've had a couple of people on our YouTube comments talk about how negative we've been. we're just calling balls and strikes here. Like, we want the Astros to be great. We want them to be 160-2. It's just when we had a positive outlook out them in years past, it's because we felt like the team had something going for it. But now I don't think you can have I don't see how you could be super positive with such an unsettled outfield, and right now, frankly, an unsettled bullpen.
Yeah, bullpen is thin. Outfield is a giant question mark. And I still
We have
don't
one of the best
understand
infields in baseball and a great starting rotation. I'll say that.
if everybody's healthy. I mean, that's the rub. Correa has a history of not being healthy during the regular season, and this is not 1 year; it's several years in a row. Altuve is aging, and it's happening. I hope not as rapidly as it looked like it was happening last year. And I do think there were some circumstances that we can talk about that led to Altuve's decline in August and September. But Walker didn't look great last year for half of the year. I think a lot of that was the pressure of having the baby for the first time. And I know there's a bunch of men watching this show that go, "That's stupid. That would," believe me, that will fuck up your world if you're not ready for it emotionally, mentally, having a kid. You could tell the switch went on after his daughter was born. Paredes is saying all the right things, or not saying anything, I guess. He's not happy with his role as currently defined. Pena isn't likely to start opening day at shortstop. I don't think he's going to be out for long with a fractured ring finger, but he might miss some time, and that's going to affect things. Altuve is not a good defensive second baseman, and he's playing second base full time again. Part of how the Astros won as many games as they won last year was having a really good infield defense, and that's downgraded. And then you have the catching situation, which nobody's willing to talk about. Yainer Diaz is not a major league catcher. He plays the position. I do understand that. If you're building a fantasy team,
Actually, he seems to be a major league catcher.
I agree. De facto, he is a major league catcher,
He's
but
not a major league catcher.
But de jure, I don't think he qualifies on either front.
No, he's not good enough offensively. He's not good enough defensively.
I'll take a lot of questions. The fact that our fan base is excited about Christian Vasquez potentially being our second catcher should tell you everything. Vasquez was a great pickup in 2022. It's 2026.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's funny because there's going to be the hot seat on Joe Espada. I know none of roster construction is obviously not on Joe Espada's issues. Joe Espada's job is to keep things together. And honestly, he's not really demonstrated his ability to do that. When there's been controversy, I don't think anybody particularly thinks he handled the Framber Valdez meltdown pretty well. But what I think is interesting on top of that is you've got a bench coach that just won the Puerto Rican League and the World Baseball Classic. You floated the possibility that he's the Astros manager by July, and frankly, I can see it. Jim Crane's already paying him.
And it's a no harm, no foul kind of extension at that point. If the Astros get off to the start, I kind of assume they're going to, and they are second or third place in the division by a certain margin by the All-Star break, I fully see a world where Omar Lopez is managing the rest of the way, because there's no harm, no foul. You're already, to your point, you're already paying Omar Lopez a salary. You get to wipe the slate clean with what we all expect is going to happen in 2027. So it's a nice little tryout for him and a feather in his cap to say he was a major league manager if that happens. There's so much that Espada doesn't do well that he's going to have to do well. And let me couch that. He hasn't demonstrated that he can do well yet. He may fully have the ability.
People learn. People get better. People learn.
And I'm not out on Joe Espada, but he's going to have to manage egos more than he's had to do in the past with the Paredes, Walker, Correa mishmash on the infield. He's got a bullpen that is going to have two giant holes to open the season, and I don't think the medical reports on Bennett Sousa sound promising to see him before June, because those oblique strains take a minute to get over. So you've got a thin bullpen, which he's going to have to manage deftly. We think we have a good opening rotation, but you really don't know what you're getting from Lance McCullers Jr. I hope we know what we're getting from Christian Javier, because he's looked good in the spring, but Velocity hasn't been where it's been in the past. And so 2 years removed from all the surgeries, you don't know.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with Hunter Brown. I feel comfortable with Mike Burrows. I'm getting there on my
I-45, baby.
I want to, and again, these aren't I want them to fail kind of conversations, but it's an unknown. It's an unknown how he's going to translate. And if you look at spring training baseball as this proves the concept, spring training baseball proves absolutely nothing. Because the second there's a scouting report on any pitcher, one time through a rotation, two times through a rotation, hitters adjust in the major leagues, just like pitchers adjust to hitters coming up.
Yeah.
Cam Smith looked great until he wasn't. It's going to be an adjustment, and we just don't know how well he's going to adjust. I hope it's soon. I hope it's quickly. My fears are not based on anything, but I think we've got 2 to 3 really good starting pitchers and then 2 to 3 question marks. And that spills over to the bullpen because we evidently are opening with a 5-man rotation. And then after the first 7 games, we're going to move to a 6-man rotation. You've got to manage the egos of the guys who are going to be shuttling back and forth between that 6th spot and the bullpen and how they're used. And I will say one criticism I think that I have of Espada that is legitimate is that we do tend to Dusty Baker some guys in the bullpen and just forget that they're there for several days in a row. And
then
rely heavily
and
then rely heavily on other guys, and they're worn out by a certain point. So some things that Espada has demonstrated are his traits are gonna have to change, are gonna have to evolve for this to be a successful season. And I'm just not sold on it yet.
I echo your concerns throughout. You talk about Altuve and how we're watching him get older. That's because the man should be a DH. In fact, if you go look at his offensive breakdown last year, he was the same old Altuve offensively on days he was DHing. It's because his legs are tired. He's older. And the fact is we don't feel like we can play our all-star left fielder in left field. And that is I'm going to die on this hill that having a 28-year-old, I think Alvarez is only 28, right? How old is he?
His surgical parts are like 6 months old.
6 months old. But Alvarez,
I think this is his age 29 season.
He is 28. He is turning 29. You're right. Midway through this season. So, yes, he is 28 years old. You should be able to play a 28-year-old left fielder in actual left field. And the minute you can't do that, you create a problem because it's a way different outfield, Andy, if you've got Alvarez and Cam on the corners. And then you could DH Altuve, and then all of a sudden you can get a scrappy glove first second baseman to talk about the aforementioned infield defense that is supposed to be a hallmark of this Astros club. It's a problem.
Yeah, I even think you could bring a minor leaguer up and replicate what we got out of second base last year if you got the defense. And I think there's candidates the part. And Bryce Matthews may be a better second baseman at this point than Jose Altuve. And I mean that from a defensive side. That please, all you Altuve lovers.
We're Altuve lovers. It's like,
agreed. But I think the reality, you can't just ignore the reality of what's happening in front of your eyes. I think there were a lot of circumstances, as I alluded to earlier, that led to Altuve's decline in August and September. Very steep decline. I think, we found out later that he was playing with a hurt foot for most of that period of time, but didn't feel he could take any time off. And legitimately, he probably couldn't because of what all was going on around the IL and the Astros at that point. He was playing too much. When you go in the season with the goal of him getting 500 at-bats and he's pushing 600 with no sign of being able to take a day off, that takes a toll. He was supposed to be spending most of his time in left field, which was going to be less physically demanding. That didn't work out because of all the injuries. I think it makes sense that what happened. I don't expect August, September Altuve to be what we see later this week. I'm going to opening day. I don't know why I can't even keep that straight.
Later this week, yeah.
But the reality is he's not a guy that's going to hit 330 and challenge for batting titles. He's going to be a good major league player and probably post somewhere around a 720 to 750 OPS. And that should be fine for a guy who's 36 years old. but we are relying on him to be the linchpin of an offense. And I don't think he's that guy anymore. And if he could just DH, then that would solve a lot of problems. But the Astros were never able to find a role for Alvarez in the field. And that should be left field. I still in this world where he, with all apologies to Ron Washington, rest in peace, he could have learned to play first base. Imagine how many problems that fixes.
Yeah.
If Alvarez was even just a major league average first baseman.
Yeah, I don't know why that was never fully, especially when you had to deal with all of the post-Yuli drama, why that was never really addressed or attempted.
I would love to know what happened, because the story out of the Astros camp is that we've tried this in the minor leagues. It's just not something that's going to work out. What did he murder somebody at first base?
I don't know. I mean, I would like to. When did it happen? Like, I mean, I follow the minors pretty close. I don't remember a second of Yordan Alvarez at first base.
I mean, the way they talk about it, somebody crossed him at first base and he gave them the plague. And they're trying to avoid another COVID-19 situation by keeping him away from first base. Something bad happened, like a ghost appears when he plays first base. I don't know. But the fact is, the man can't play the field, and he's taking the position that Altuve should have gently glided into at this point in his career, and it's not able to happen based on roster construction.
Yeah, that's going to be. I think that what I think that's going to mean too is it's going to make a, because Altuve is at some point going to have to be the DH if we are really going to let him be an Astro for life, and that's going to make for a binary choice whenever contracts start coming up, because you can't keep this problem around forever.
Well, and that's another question that Astros fans don't want to ask themselves: is Yordan Alvarez worth an extension when his contract is up in a year or two? Because based on his ability to stay healthy, I don't know that he is.
I would make the argument that he's not. Okay, well so that's where we are with the Astros.
Happy, joy.
Happy. Well, and we'll be back Friday after opening day to talk to react or overreact to one win or one loss. Andy, I'm going to give you a chance to now overreact to one series loss for the Aggies. Losing.
I don't have to overreact, because I can just turn on Texags and tell you what's happening. They're already lining up candidates for Early's job, to the point that our fan base. Let me tell you how delusional the A&M fan base is right now. We're unhappy with Mike Early, mostly based on last year. Did not have a good series against Georgia this week, and they're now 2-4 in SEC play, which is not the worst place in the world to be, but not a great place to be. Not only are we calling for his job, but several members of our fan base are willing to ignore the realities of how college baseball overlaps with Major League Baseball. And somehow we're going to hire Tony Vitello from the Giants, even though his rookie season as manager won't be over for 6 months after the college baseball season is over. We're just going to sit around for 6 months with no head coach, because that's a thing that we're going to do.
Or they think he'll leave the Giants for it.
Or then he's going to leave his major league paycheck.
Yeah.
It's just, it's bizarre. It was a disappointing weekend against Georgia. And we're going to point, if you're looking for hopeful things out of this, we scored more runs in the 3-game series than Georgia did. Unfortunately, in 2 of those games, it didn't work out for us. And it was the same way with Oklahoma. We scored more runs in the 3 games combined, but that's not how baseball works. You have to actually win individual games. So at some point, I feel like that's going to even out, and those things tend to balance out. Our fan base, and your fan base probably, fails to realize a lot of the times that if you go somewhere around 500 in SEC play, you're a regional host.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is 2 series into a very long college baseball season. I think pressing the panic button right now is a little bit early. And I think a lot of it has to do with the disappointment and entitlement people felt after last year, which has no bearing on this year, frankly. So I'm hoping for better things this coming weekend. But it was a disappointing weekend. I understand it. I don't condone some of the reactions, but it's where my fan base is. We are delusional and sad, and the only happy Aggie is an unhappy Aggie.
That needs to be a T-shirt.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Aggie Connections.
Texas went into Auburn, played a really good Auburn team. The bullpen was iffy. It's funny, it was iffy until it wasn't, because Volantis, who had been just an all-world pitcher since his freshman year, only got through 4, didn't give up any runs, but he walked some guys. His pitch count got high, and then proceeded to the Longhorn bullpen proceeded to 2-hit Auburn the rest of the way. But I feel like you told me that Schloss's bullpen usage would be curious at times. And he's got a little bit of let me try to get cute and squeeze one more inning out of a guy. But I want to be like, and look, Schloss has forgotten more about baseball than what I know. But it does seem like you're only asking these guys to pitch 3 days a week. You can just pitch a guy an inning and not try to steal, because you're not throwing most of your major arms on a Tuesday, right?
Have you experienced the Slosh taking out a guy who's thrown 2 pitches to a batter and like mid at bat yet?
Not yet. That
because he used to love to do that when he was our head coach, and it drove our fan base crazy.
Yeah,
like you'd go you'd go 2-1 on a guy, and he'd pull the pitcher in the middle of the at bat and bring in another guy.
Yeah, we've not seen that yet, I don't think so. That would vex me. Auburn did it once. Well, they did it twice yesterday. Once due to injury, though, which was pretty sad. But I think it was because the guy that they had pulled pitched a lot Friday night. But it on the bright side is really and truly the Longhorns are 2 Friday night meltdowns away from being undefeated in SEC play. They have won their last 22 regular season series. No, they've won 22 of their last 23 regular season series. So, there's a lot of statistical comparisons being made to 2005 and how this team is actually ahead of 2005. So, I'm going to file that away as nothing that I'm caring to think about until May. But,
there's all of April and all of May to get through. Long way to go. I think the Longhorn baseball team is very well positioned for a very deep run. I think going into the season, your bullpen was going to be a little bit of a question mark anyway. Not that there's not arms, but just getting them to gel, figuring out what roles are. And a lot of the early experimentation you're seeing right now with Slosh is trying to figure out who he can count on in what kind of situations. And you're right, regardless of my personal feelings of the guy, he's an excellent baseball coach, and doesn't suffer from this need for his players to like him, or for the parents to like him, or for the other coaches to like him, because he's singular and focused about we're going to win. And that's what he does throughout his career. So I would say that the bullpen usage is going to drive you crazy. I would just embrace it at this point, because you will see things like, I'm going to replace this pitcher right now because I feel like it and I have a big brain. And that's, there's probably more into it, but that's what it feels like as a fan. I also realized you got to battle the new lighting system at Auburn Sanford Stadium.
Oh my Lord.
And I will correct you. They do have lights, but they don't seem to be aimed at the field.
I have not seen, and part of me didn't know, like, of course, the way a team photographs versus the reality of what the ballpark looks like, clearly different. But that looked like Texas State's lighting.
Well, I looked it up because I wanted to really bust on them for not having lighting, and I knew that didn't. But evidently, they have a new lighting system, full LED technology. Everything's great. But all the comments were like, I don't think they aimed it at the field. I don't think if you're in the outfield, you can necessarily see balls hit to the outfield.
I'm like making the brightness as bright as I can on my computer when I had it on the computer. And then when I put up on the big TV, I was like, oh, okay. We do have to wrap up our sports talk before I want to talk a little bit about the war with mentioning that our basketball teams,
the excursion.
Well, that's right. The excursion. How are you feeling? I don't know what your expectations were for Aggie basketball. They were not competitive against Houston, which is a special kind of annoying, because that means McTaggart on Twitter won't be a lot of fun. But just overall, what were your takes on the Aggie basketball season this year?
House money. I will say that while the actual in-game result was disappointing, I don't think that any serious basketball fan picked A&M to do what they even did in the tournament, much less in the regular season. Bucky McMillan was the last D1 coach hired during the cycle last year. He had to put a roster he inherited one player because Buzz Williams took all the rest of the players to Maryland with him. And Maryland didn't make the tournament, and I don't think they won 10 games this year. That's a whole different thing. Anyway.
Why would you leave A&M for Maryland? Crab cakes?
Basketball pedigree, I get it. And frankly, Buzz Williams wore out his welcome. And yeah, some people just like crab cakes and really loud flags. So Bucky McMillan had to put together a roster from what was left in the portal with, I think, 10 days to go, and managed to put the roster together, sign a team, and be competitive in the SEC all year long, which is a good basketball league. Anything that happened making the tournament and beyond was just gravy. And we managed to win a game that we were not favored to win against St. Mary's in the first round because the Gales are a very strong WCC team. And I know from a football perspective, you're like, well, of course, A&M beats St. Mary's of California.
Right.
From a basketball perspective, that's not really how that works. So anything that happened beyond winning a game or just making the tournament was house money and showed great hope for the future for McMillan. The fact that they got beat by a dramatically superior Houston team wasn't a surprise. And not to gripe about the officiating, but Houston had the body type of player to play the games that the officials would allow to play. So they were a lot more physical than A&M could be. They were throwing a lot more in the realm of the elbows and just doing the things that you do when you're a bigger, more physical team. And A&M just couldn't hold up because of the kind of personnel they had. Having said that, I think the future is really bright for the program. I think McMillan finally getting to have a full recruiting cycle and actually bring guys that that he wants on the team. And I don't mean that because I'm sure he loved all the guys on the team, but there were some reaches made.
But when you're the best of what's left, that doesn't really.
But that literally was the roster.
Yeah.
It is This is what's left of the guys who haven't signed with any other team. It's like you picked the teams at recess, and the two left at the end where you're trying to, I don't really want any of them. We got both of them.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's true. You're not wrong. And it's perplexing because I was watching the Longhorn game and I was texting with Eric, the peanut guy Mertens, who those of you who know any of Ballpark Nation stuff know Eric, but Eric also was for a while I believe the chaplain for the Gonzaga basketball team when he worked for Gonzaga. So he's very involved. And it was funny to him to talk about how Texas might be Cinderella this year for the tournament because we just don't, but we got into the conversation about how, Texas is not, as a state, we're not devoid of basketball talent, but somehow neither of our schools, and I mentioned, Texas has one of the best histories in football and baseball and nothing in basketball. I think 12 Sweet 16s its entire history. It's just fascinating to me how it's
no school in the state of Texas. I mean, you have Texas Western in the 60s, who is now UTEP, and you have Baylor about 10 years ago.
And they're murderers.
And literally that's the extent of national championship success in basketball in the entire state of Texas in the history of NCAA basketball. You would expect that means that some combination of Texas, A&M, Houston are going to go on a huge run at some point in the next decade just to even things out statistically. I think Sean Miller did a yeoman's job in his first year. I think that you saw a lot of first-year growth and pains throughout the season because there were stretches that you guys looked really, really unbeatable and stretches like it looked like you couldn't find the basket at all. Like where's the stadium kind of couldn't find the basket.
Yeah.
And the great thing about the NCAA tournament is that not unlike baseball, if you get hot at the right time and go on the right run, I mean, the right matchups will lead you to have victories. And you saw that with the play-in game. You saw that against BYU yesterday or Saturday. Texas might be getting hot at the right time. Problem is, we've said this about the Texas team a couple times this year, and then they proceed to lose 3 or 4 of the next games. And you're now in a place where one loss sends you home. So I think, again, another first-year coach, anything that happens from this point is just positive. So it's enjoy the ride, I guess, because I think Sean Miller's got your team in a good spot, even though a lot of your fan base wanted him fired after the first week of the season.
Yeah. And I think he's already recruiting pretty well. So we'll see, obviously, with the, and again, it's funny because.
What is recruiting at Texas? You just hang out with Matthew McConaughey for a weekend?
In a Lambo.
I will get you all these drugs.
Yeah. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed that Timothy Chalamet made his stupid ass ballet opera comment on stage at Texas, talking to the film department for that stupid CNN thing. Like,
it's
I don't know. Timothy Chalamet is the biggest weasel in Hollywood right now. And I'm so glad, not only because I thought Michael B. Jordan, for as much as I thought Sinners was kind of a swing and a miss for me from a horror perspective. And, that's how my lens is going to be for that movie. I think Michael B. Jordan's one of the best actors working today and absolutely deserved the Oscar. And Chalamet is a little rat. So,
I think the thing with Michael B. Jordan, and I hate that we have to say B, I think we know which Michael Jordan we're talking about.
We're not talking about the basketball player. Yeah.
Yeah, the 57-year-old
basketball show, we certainly aren't talking about the basketball player.
Correct. That's bouncy ball, and we don't really reflect on it. The moments we just gave that sport, that's the moments we gave that sport this year.
That's a year's worth of content.
Yeah, but I think the thing that set Jordan's performance apart from me this year was that he played 2 roles, which there's a lot of history of film with twin casting, where you're going to play 2 roles, but they were 2 distinct roles, and that you could actually take everything else out of the movie. You could tell which one was on the screen based on the acting job that was being done. And for me, that was really impressive. And I know it's one of those Oscar tropes. Well, how do you win an Oscar? You lose a bunch of weight or you gain a bunch of weight. Yeah. I think being able to play distinct roles and be the same guy in real life is a giant deal. So I think that was positive. And certainly the Academy agreed with me.
Yeah. I had not seen One Battle After Another. Paul Thomas Anderson is not my guy, so I assume it deserved its win.
Again, as we've talked about, if you, it was like PTA made a Coen Brothers film. So if you like Coen Brothers films, you're far more likely to like this than you just say Magnolia, which is very much an acquired taste.
And which by really acquired, I mean like Magnolia, but yeah. I also hate Leo.
Fair.
I hate Leo. And there's a couple movies in the theaters right now that we want to go see. We really have heard nothing but good things about Project Hail Mary. And I really want to go.
We saw that this weekend. Did the noon matinee on Saturday. Was riveted the entire time. I think if the science fiction part of it may not be the strongest, but the buddy cop aspect of it was worth every bit of it. And anytime a movie can actually make you feel something about a relationship that they built over the course of 2 hours, super, super entertaining movie.
Yeah, that's on our agenda and Ready or Not 2, because I'm love the first one, and I'm a big Samara Weaving fan.
Yeah, we had to watch Ready or Not 1. I don't know if you call it that. Because Elizabeth did not remember ever seeing it. And I know that she's seen it because I've seen it, and that wouldn't have been something that I would just gone out and watched on my own. So we ended up rewatching it. And of course, 45 minutes into it, she's like, "Oh yeah, I've seen this before." Yeah, I know you have. Anyway, so we watched
I've never had that conversation ever. Looks dramatically into camera.
So we're now prepped for Ready or Not 2. And I'm looking forward to that because it's a fun movie. It's not an award-winning kind of film, but it's a fun movie that I think Hollywood should be putting out more of. It's not based on IP. It was an original story. Yes, I know this sequel is obviously based on an IP now, but I'd rather build on that IP than, frankly, see Dune for the 3rd time.
Yeah. completely agree. And again, very excited. Although this summer I'm looking forward to a couple of. I mean, the original IP, the Odyssey. I'm looking forward to that. But I'm very much a Samara Weaving fan. So there we go.
No, the previews look good for that. There's a Red Band trailer rolling around too.
Ooh, I need to check
So
that out.
it's just very bloody. It's very bloody. That's all it is. There's none of the stuff you want to see in a Red Band trailer.
I can keep my eyes closed then and just imagine. Last thing, Andy. Trump has now said, I don't even know what to start politically today, because on the one hand, we've now got ICE people at the airport. So you better have that drink under 4. You better not have any liquid over 4 ounces, or you're going to get shot.
Maybe they're not, because as of 7:00 this morning, they were not at Bush or Hobby.
No, they're only at 20 airports in the country, and they're only doing external security. They're not actually doing any screening of passengers.
Because they're not qualified to.
They're not qualified to do that.
As much as I bag on TSA agents, they do something like 120 hours of training, and then they have to be shadowed on the job for another 4 or 5 weeks. So I'm pleased, at least, that they don't think that you can just thrust some guy who wasn't trained to do detention into now doing security detail. Because I don't necessarily think all of TSA procedures are necessary, because I think a lot of it is theater. But there is a certain amount of safety they provide, and compromising that little bit of security doesn't sit well with me as somebody who travels on a frequent basis.
Yeah, and I got to say too, every TSA agent Jessica and I encountered over our trip to and from the DR could not have been more professional or more pleasant. And just remember, guys, they're working without pay. So today is not the day to be a dick about something with TSA.
Well, and I know it's a little bit of virtue signaling, or some people will accuse me of that, but I flew last week and this past week, and I made a point for each TSA agent that I had to interact with to say thank you. And I know it's a very minor thing, but they are showing up to work with no pay since Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
it is
Jess
now March 23rd.
Jess can corroborate that I made a point of doing it as well, and they actually do appreciate stuff like that. Shout out to Pete Terry's, which is pretty good burger joint here in Austin, who essentially went up and fed 250 TSA agents on Saturday. It's definitely better than In-N-Out. But no, Andy, my question to you is, who do we trust when it comes to this Iran war thing? Because now Trump has said we're not going to bomb any power stations because we're negotiating. And Iran has just come out before I hit go live and says we have not had any discussions.
Who do we trust kind of gets to the crux of the entire last decade. And I know we're talking specifically about the conflict in Iran, and I don't know that it's an excursion or an exercise or a war or whatever noun you want to use to describe it.
All I know is we won, but we have a lot more work to do.
And we need $200 billion to do it.
And the allies.
But we won, and they're decimated. But somebody keeps bombing our assets, but we won and they're decimated. I think the reality is that when you are trying to seize control of a country, that undermining the ability to discern truth is one of the hallmarks for doing that. And if you think I'm talking about Iran at this point, I'm not. Because for the last decade, we've been told not to listen to mainstream media, not to listen to this source or that source, but to only listen to this source, but not that source when it says something I don't like. And so at this point, truth only comes from the White House, and they've proven to be not trustworthy. So I don't know in an answer to your question. I think every media outlet has a certain amount of bias to it, but we as a country don't seem to want to discern anymore. We just want to have things spoon-fed to us. And normally I'd say at this point, maybe turn to the BBC and see what they're saying. Because while there's a little bit of a tint, they don't have the vested interest in one side or the other at this point. Having said that, I'm glad that Trump backed off. I know the natural inclination for my side of the world, my side of the aisle, would be to taco him again. But we don't need to be bombing power plants in Iran. that no good was going to come of that. So the fact that we're backing off for whatever reason and however he needs to make it look at this point is a positive, even if it's kind of Machiavellian to get there. But this entire thing's a mess. The entire exercise is a mess. The only thing that's clear to me is that we went in as an exercise of strength to distract from a host of other things with no real plan on how it was going to proceed, how we were going to conduct it, and how we were going to exit it.
We're also did not plan for, we have a strong, powerful military, but we're also expending ammunition. We're not necessarily replacing at the same rate. We're leaving ourselves open for actual possible conflicts that could matter in the coming. So what we've done basically is we're exacerbating our situation with China. All you need to do is look at the history of World War II and understand that while we call it the unprovoked attack on Hawaii and Pearl Harbor, unprovoked is a matter of opinion. The Japanese plant sure as fuck felt provoked. Why were they provoked? Because we had an oil embargo. Well, that's a de facto what's happening now with China, because all of their oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz.
Hold on.
Are we ready for a war with China?
I want to understand. Yeah, I want to understand because it's confusing to me. Just make sure I'm clear on this. So we, being the U.S., we're buying with Chinese currency oil from a country that we're currently stating is obliterated. And then this money that we're spending is funding the missiles that just shot down an F-35 for the first time, killed our troops, and are blowing up our allies' oil and gas infrastructure. Is that basically the gist?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we've lifted the oil embargo on both Iranian and Russian oil, none of it makes any sense.
That's like I'm saying, there's no plan. It's just, this is a war on vibes. And unfortunately, it's just the vibes of two guys. Hair gel and diapers.
Yeah. I mean, and if you don't have to look, I guess let me finish by saying this. It looks like the F-35 was damaged, but not actually shot down. So there's that. But let me just say this. Robert Mueller, whether you like him or not, was an American hero who earned a Bronze Star in Vietnam. And like I said in my little bit yesterday on TikTok, they don't give those away for cleaning latrines.
Yeah. Again, I don't think mental health is something to make fun of or make light of, but I also don't think we should have somebody who is very clearly going through sundowning as a stage of dementia. As the commander in chief and leader of the free world is a great position to be in.
Yeah, it's funny because we're watching the Republican Party deal with the exact same thing the Democratic Party dealt with Joe Biden. Now, the difference is Trump is one of those angry guys with Alzheimer's, Biden was just sort of dotty. But we've now had two back-to-back presidents that you cannot convince me are functioning mentally at full capacity.
Yeah, I think it's somebody. I read somebody saying that it was short-sighted not to put age limits when they were crafting the rules of the presidency 250 years ago. It's like people only lived to 50 in 1776. So the idea that you had to put an age limit of 75 would have been just unheard of, because who lives that long?
Yeah, they would have laughed. Right.
Of course you don't have a 75-year-old doing this. But I think when we get to some level of sanity, I really do think there needs to be some sort of age limit before you get into the office, because having 80-year-olds run this country is not a great idea. And this is not me being ageist, because I'm sure there's one or two that are capable of doing it. But the fact is, your mental capacities become diminished over time.
And
we are witnessing now. Yeah, we're witnessing now for 6 years in a row a steady decline in the mental capabilities of President of the United States.
And you can name all the 82-year-olds who could handle it, but no one can fully estimate just how much pressure and stress that job brings to an 82-year-old.
I mean, literally, give me a 50-year-old to run the country. That's honestly going to be one of my voting criteria. It's not going to be the only one, but it's going to be way up there. Is this guy 5 years away from retirement or 30 years away from retirement? Because I want them to actually care about what's going to happen in the future. I don't get the feeling that Donald Trump, even though he probably thinks he's immortal, cares about what's going to happen 5 years from now.
No, I don't think he does either. I think
Sure.
that's very clear. He's just trying to stay out of jail. But
I would tell you this, Jim, at some point everybody dies. Even people like Chuck Norris.
even people like Chuck Norris. There was a story, though, that Chuck Norris got bit by a cobra, and after 5 days of pain, the cobra died.
Farther back than that, in the beginning, there was nothing. Then Chuck Norris roundhouse kicked nothing and told it to get a job.
I know that one time, and I know we don't do a lot of science on this show, but Chuck Norris counted to infinity twice.
Chuck Norris has a diary. It's called the Guinness Book of World Records.
That's a good one to leave it on because I have not heard that one yet. All right, this has been Off Day. Thanks for jumping back into us. We'll be back on Friday to talk a little Astros being 1-0, baby. That's my prediction.
I mean, it's the Angels.
Yeah. And we've got Diesel on the mound. All right, for Andy, I'm Jim. This has been Off Day with Ballpark Nation. See you.
Turn out the lights. The party